The last time she truly cracked, she had been rooted in the earth. In a haze of violet and magenta, Calliope recalls a figure so small that he was not much bigger than the bucks and the bears that pawed at her roots. The figure, a man, locked his two-toned eyes onto her. It felt like a lifetime that his gaze raked across her trunk. He wandered around her base, grazed his palm against her bark, and beamed at her height. "You are perfect," he said. After long moments of study, the man began speaking in tongues. Unlike the songbirds and winds at her branches she was used to hearing, his voice spoke in riddles and puzzling inflections. The spell fascinated her. With the deafening creaks and hisses that followed, her body rapidly evolved into something new. Her leaves fell in heaps, her branches snapped, wood chips flying everywhere. Animals took shelter under logs and burrows and stared in awe as the tree changed. She was transformed into a four-legged creature. Her body was now vibrant and adorned with garments that made her sweat in the residual heat of the transformation. The loss of such a resilient birch tree, a life reconfigured, forever lamented throughout the forest. "Come home, Calliope," the man, Yidris, spoke into her ear. "How beautiful you are." His rich tenor voice reverberated through her smoothened bark. His praise satisfied her deeply. She admired her new body. Fine, sandy-colored hair sat neatly across her sturdy frame. Deep umber roots reimagined as a mane and tail flowing from her crest. She stomped the ground once, testing her power. Vapor billowed through her nostrils in ecstatic harmony. Yidris watched as Calliope bucked and whinnied around him. Energy surged through her body as if she could run forever in the fields she called home. It thrilled her to feel the grass under her hooves. She lifted her head towards the sky, and the sun's warmth embraced her. She was ready to go wherever he wished. A children's mount she became. Yidris assigned her a spot on his empty carousel shell. Another whispered incantation, and she was immobilized. It was familiar for her to be rooted in place. It felt enough like home that the memories of frolicking in the field felt like aspirations she could return to once her time on the carousel was complete. Yidris enthusiastically added new additions to the carousel each day, whether it be a horse, decor, lights, or machinery. He showered the horses with praise of their elegance and stature each day. He painted pictures in their minds of children singing and laughing, sunlight radiating off of their polished bodies, and music ringing in the air. It made her excitement for the future grow exponentially each day. But her favorite part of the entire process was whenever he smiled at her specifically. Yidris often commended her for being the most stunning horse on his carousel. She fell in love with his passion. The passion lit up her heart in silence, and it only burned brighter with each passing month that the carousel was constructed. Despite meticulous preparations, there was always something not quite right. A light bulb dimmer than the others, a hair out of place, or a spot where the paint was one shade too dark. To Calliope, his every move was an artistic vision. To Yidris, it was a setback, never quite satisfying enough. She wished he could reassure him that there was nothing to worry about, and that the carousel would be beautiful no matter what. Unease lingered in her mind, but was quickly shut down by Yidris's creativity. When the carousel finally opened for the public, Calliope's heart overflowed with joy. If she could, she would have galloped and bucked about the fairgrounds, unable to contain her energy. For a while, she did her part. For a while, the children's joy captured her heart. She loved seeing each face pass by, similar but intricately different, just like the leaves from her sister trees. "Again! Again!" the children shouted. Their parents smiled and hoisted their children up onto the horses. The scent of kettle corn and cotton candy delighted her. Laughter resonated through her wooden frame. But she could not return their smiles. She could only grimace, wide-eyed, in one shade of happiness. In this new body, she began to feel life differently. Her shoulders now bore the weight of the children instead of the gentle tickling of birds and squirrels across her branches. Her view of the horizon now circular and static, instead of the evergreen fields littered with leaves and baby animals wandering about. She was surrounded by lights that were not stars and air that was not fresh. She could sing the repetitive melodies by heart, undercut with annoyance. Her life was both overstimulating and underwhelming. But their voices, rousing her and lulling her to sleep, soothed her enough to push beyond the melancholy of her former home. She dreamt of soaring through clouds with children on her back, carrying them without fatigue. Her fantasy shoved down the negativity far enough that she could get through another day of work. He engineered the carousel to run for days on end, collecting his prizes with greed. His smile no longer reached his eyes, but his voice thrived on manipulation. "All aboard Calliope, the best of steeds with no needs." He chose her every day as his leading slogan. Calliope pressed on in silence, determined to perform her best for the man who marketed the carousel off of backhanded compliments. His remarks chipped away at the paint on her body. Not that she could see that it was happening. She could not turn her head to look at herself. Passion morphed into obsession. At first, the grand opening of the carousel had made a great impression. Flashing cameras and endless chatter fueled Yidris for more. Sometimes, Calliope would see a local newspaper whoosh by in the wind with photographs of the carousel on the front page. The clink of shillings dropping into his hat became Pavlovian. When all the seats were full, that's when Yidris would offer the biggest smile. It reminded her of when he used to look at her like that. Calliope was enamored by the experience, while Yidris adored the attention. Eventually, her outer appearance reflected her inner heartbreak. Her once brilliant garments faded from exposure to the sun and wore down to threads. The peach-tinted hair stained from the mud of children's shoes. She became dizzy at the sight of her creator, and that was before the daily dose of magical energy was pumped into the carousel to make her head spin even more. The nightly reveries distorted into illusions, and then into nightmares. Her mind conjured scenes of children screaming so loud that she lost her hearing. Another night, Yidris scoffed at her broken legs and discarded her. The next dream, children's legs wrapped so tightly around her ribs that she suffocated. Enough revolutions around the same pole helped her realize the centerpiece of her own despair was the same man who gave her this purpose. Their work in harmony transposed into dissonance. Despite the daily festival, the carousel's sales steadily declined. Yidris wore a furrow in his brow underneath his top hat, confused or disappointed in the lack of attendance to his life's work. Finally, Yidris noticed Calliope's state. He met her desperate look with contempt, which said more than anything that could come out of his mouth. Turning away from her, he muttered his discouragement as he walked into his private tent. The carousel did not turn on the next day. While relieved to have a sudden day of rest, Calliope's skin prickled as an unfamiliar tension in the air surrounded her. Within hours, thick indigo clouds engulfed the sky. The temperature grew colder, threatening to turn into frost along her back. Yidris marched out of his tent with a satchel over his shoulder. He didn't even look at Calliope as he journeyed out of the fairgrounds. She ruminated his disappearance. Where did he go? What is he looking for? If only I could mend myself, he'd be delighted. I wish I could make this storm go away, then he'll come back to me. Have I given him enough? The chaos storm grew bigger and darker, and she wondered if the sky was mirroring her darkened thoughts. She missed when the only darkness she ever experienced was that of peaceful nightfall. Yidris returned deep into the third night. Moonlight struggled to bleed through the lingering clouds of the chaos storm. Calliope felt simultaneously relieved and apprehensive about his return. He reached into his satchel, his mouth warped into a devilish sneer behind the glass vial he retrieved. It was filled with a substance as blue as the chaos storm she had just sat through. He shook the glass once and watched its contents swirl. Calliope realized it was as if he caught the storm in the bottle, miniaturizing it like a souvenir. Yidris sauntered towards Calliope and looked her in the eyes. Popping the cork off the bottle, he grumbled a spell and poured the blue solution over her back. Immediately, wood fractured and cracked. Her legs flooded with warmth and were the first thing she could move. The sudden movement surprised her as the fluid continued to trickle over her. Tendons and muscles long neglected began to ignite into action. The carousel rattled as Calliope broke free of her position. The last thing that returned to her was her voice. She glared right back at Yidris and bellowed a diminished chord in his face. Stunned at his miscommunication, Yidris stumbled off the carousel. "No," he cried. "This was meant to fix you." Calliope reared at him, making Yidris fall backwards in fright. As her hooves fell back on the platform, the entire carousel boomed. She inhaled deeply and ground her back hooves onto the platform. She lowered her head to prepare herself to run. "Don't you dare," Yidris threatened. His voice had lost its confidence she had grown accustomed to, replaced with disoriented anger. She scraped her front hoof once at the ground, then launched herself over Yidris with all her might. Her hoofbeats frantically escaped through the fairgrounds, leaving a thick trail of dust in her wake. Yidra scrambled back up. "Stop!" he screamed. "You belong to me." Enough with this manipulation, Calliope thought. She wasn't sure if it was debris in her eye from running, the overwhelming respite of her freedom, or the grief of the man she once loved that let tears flow from her magenta eyes. The serum had dissolved her blankets and banners, leaving her to look like an ordinary horse. She ran for miles searching for her forest. Her hoofbeats slowed to a trot when she found a suitable meadow to lie down in. Her chest heaved and her legs trembled as she bent towards the soft grass. Exhaustion had finally caught up with her. With a glissando of a sigh, she finally rested her head on the grass. She contemplated herself to sleep, wondering what would happen to the broken carousel without her. Would she ever find her true home again? What was she to do now that she was free? Adagio, her heartbeat slowed and her eyelids slid closed. Melancholy vapor rose from her nostrils, intertwining with a rose-tinted smoke that had quietly caught up to her.